Hi, everyone. Welcome to Interchange. I'm Dan Jones. Thank you so very much for joining us. Well, we have great stuff to talk about again this week. The Barrett-Walker race stays close and stays interesting. And we'll talk about President Obama coming out in support of same-sex marriage. We will talk about the push for a new home for the Milwaukee Bucks. And we will also talk about UWM hiring a big-name athletic director. Okay, joining us tonight are some familiar faces. We have longtime newspaper columnist Joel McNally. Kevin Fischer, former broadcast journalist, political analyst, and oftentimes a fill-in host over on WISN Talk Radio. Avi Lenk is the former Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel business columnist, now retired. And Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. Rick Horowitz will be along with commentary at the end of the show. Okay, the first thing we're going to talk about is the race for governor. Everybody's talking about it. Tom Barrett crushes Kathleen Falk in the primary despite his somewhat rocky relationship with organized labor. But Scott Walker fans turn out in huge numbers to support the governor. The next 4 weeks are going to be very interesting. Do you expect any big surprises, or is this going to go back and forth, back and forth?
Well, both camps have their challenges. I think the first challenge for both sides is to keep some integrity to their message. They're going to have to stay focused with their message. Right now, you've got Mayor Barrett that is taking the scattergun approach, and you've got the governor trying to keep up with answering all of those issues that keep surfacing from that camp. I think people are going to, those that are still undecided, and that number is very, very small right now, people are going to try to hone in on the finesses of their messages. And if they perceive that one candidate or the other is not giving them the straight up, that candidate is going to lose. And those will be the deciders in this race. I think the second challenge that each camp is going to have is how do they get their people out? The ground game is going to be all important, especially in the African-American community. I don't see the Democrats being able to pull it out unless they get a high turnout of African-American voters. And those voters have to be convinced, first off, that Tom Barrett is carrying their message. They are more likely to turn out because they don't have any strong affinity for Governor Walker. And as long as they have a sense that all is going to go totally wrong for them if they have another 2 years of Governor Walker, it will be to Tom Barrett's advantage because those numbers will be significantly high enough to give him the kinds of margins that he needs in order to win the election.
Avi, every time I hear somebody say, well, this is going to be a close race, it's up to the undecideds, I think, how can there possibly be one single human being in the state of Wisconsin who's undecided? After this past year, they know exactly what they think about Scott
I don't
Walker.
know. I actually talked to somebody somebody very close to me this last week who is undecided. And they have not been paying attention, and they don't particularly think that it means that much to them. This is part of what the governor's been trying to do by dividing and conquering the state. He wants to get a bunch of people who are very energized on his behalf, and he wants to try and do everything he can to damper down anybody else, make it think it isn't all that important to them. Democrats are trying to do the same thing with a little bit of a different spin to it. I think they are more, the mayor's been going around saying a lot that it's time to stop a civil war, stop uniting the state, stop dividing the state, try unite it. And this video which surfaced this week showing the governor and he hasn't said it wasn't right. No one said it was done by any kind of subterfuge. Forthrightly telling a billionaire down in Janesville that his strategy is to divide and conquer organized labor, and that's the way he's going to move this state forward. I think that will backfire in his direction. The other thing that Gerard did not mention is if the district attorney does anything in Milwaukee County, what might become of this seemingly endless John Doe investigation that's already touched a bunch of people who are close to the governor. Whether or not it would make any difference, given how set in their ways most of the people are in the state, I don't know. But if we're talking about these undecideds, that might very well be the kind of thing that at the very end could push them into the Barrett camp.
Kevin, if the election was held today, would you be worried that the Republicans would lose?
No, not at all, especially after the amazing turnout. That was a turnout explosion that was, for the Republicans, for Scott Walker, that was A, unexpected, B, unprecedented. It's just not supposed to happen when you have a sitting incumbent in a nothing primary against a token opponent, when there's such a heated vote on the other side of the aisle. But the Scott Walker supporters really came out in big numbers, and that bodes well for him. Now, that's not to say that the Democrats are not equally energized, but I think they have a bigger turnout problem than Republicans do, especially in the city of Milwaukee, in suburbs surrounding Milwaukee County. The mayor's going to need a big turnout in the city of Milwaukee to kind of squelch what is sure to be an avalanche of votes for Scott Walker in those surrounding suburbs. It is going to be very close. It's going to come down to turnout. I think you'll see a strategy on the part of the mayor. You saw that the unions' clout just isn't there. They wasted millions and millions of more money wasting it on Kathleen Falk. So the mayor is going to change the subject when we all know the reason for this recall is the governor's reforms when it comes to public sector unions. That's the reason we're talking about this. That's the reason we're having this recall. Yet the mayor's not going to want to talk about that. He's going to want to talk about anything but. And the governor is going to talk about moving forward and not going back to the days of big taxes, big spending, bloated budgets.
If nearly 1 million people signed those recall petitions, why didn't nearly 1 million people turn out to vote for Falk or Barrett?
Want a primary? You know, we know turnouts in primaries are never what they're going to be in the final election. I thought it was a terrific primary. You know, despite the media trying to all the time claim, you know, make up this artificial rift within the Democratic Party and how these candidates were just splitting the Democratic Party. It was just the opposite. You know, all 4 candidates were on message against Scott Walker, and they never hardly said a discouraging word about each other. It was perfect. And the result was perfect. The candidate, you know, it's hilarious to hear, you know, Kevin over there always, and he and the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel have been right on this message that it's only about collective bargaining. It's only about collective bargaining. It's only about the union bosses.
You're going to lump me with your ex-paper?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's amazing. It's amazing because, of course, it's not about any of that. It's about Scott Walker. It's about everything he's done. Yes, destroying 50 years of union rights was a big deal, but so is destroying the environment, so is destroying education, so is destroying the technical college system, so is destroying higher education. You know, it is everything. And the other thing that the media has been saying a lot is, you know, it's so even and both sides are so passionate. You know what? In the Republican Party, there absolutely is a lot of passion in one group, the Tea Party group. I'll tell you who is not so passionate in the Republican Party. All the union members who have consistently, you know, voted for Republicans and conservative candidates, because there are a lot of conservative union members, they're not passionate pro-Walker. All of the
How do you know that?
All of the Republican businessmen,
you don't know that.
because they'd be fools.
Somebody
all of the
voted for Scott Walker
Republican
the other day.
businessmen in this state that are not part of the Milwaukee Association of Commerce, that turns on its own businessmen and tries to run the talgo industry, one of the few new industries out of Milwaukee. But the Republican businessmen in Madison who wanted a link to Chicago and Milwaukee with a high-speed train system, the Republican businessmen in northern Wisconsin, a lot of typical Republican voters do not like Scott Walker. And the fact that he's got the Tea Party all gung-ho, that's actually good, as raising $25 million from every right-winger in the nation that doesn't live in Wisconsin.
I'm very, very sincere and honest here. I would like you to find those Republican business people and Republican voters who don't like Scott Walker, and I would like you to introduce me to them. I would love to meet them.
How about the Association of Commerce in northern Wisconsin?
All right, next topic.
Yeah.
Let's talk for just a minute about Barack Obama now saying he supports same-sex marriage, but it should be left up to the individual states as to whether they want to permit it. Seems like kind of a lukewarm appeal for support just a few months away from the election, Avi.
Well, I don't know. It's highly symbolic, you know, that the President of the United States feels comfortable enough in himself, and I would assume in the politics of the country, to take this on when no one was really pushing him to do it.
But why now and not last year, the year before, or the year before?
Take him at his word that he evolved. On the other hand, you could decide that he decided it was a good issue to bring into the presidential election. He's not going to probably get the votes of anybody who feels passionately about this. And he is forcing Mr. Romney to talk about it, where Mr. Romney's flip-flops are again evident. He
just evolved.
He evolved. All right, he evolved.
If you want to say that the president evolved on same-sex, then Mitt Romney can say he evolved on other issues.
But the interesting thing is that Mr. Romney has apparently decided this is not where he wants to fight the election. He wants to keep bringing it back to the economy. He also, didn't take up when we had this kerfuffle a couple of weeks ago about bin Laden, and Romney chose not to make that an issue in the election and to talk only about the economy.
Golly, I wonder if Romney's got any issues in the election.
But part of politically what the president is doing here is he's taking liberal or socially progressive issues and he's putting them in front of Mr. Romney and saying, okay, you want to tee up on this? And Governor Romney has decided in the two cases, and certainly in this case, no, I don't want to fight the election on the question of gay marriage. We're going to do what we can to mute it. We want to talk about the economy. And I think, that's his calculation. I think he's going to lose on the economy.
Or is President Obama trying to take the spotlight off of the economy?
Well, there are some who would say that, and I would think that there was no reason for him to bring it up at this time other than his wanting to give some personal expression to his support for gay marriage. Interesting thing happened, though, when he did that. Romney's support among evangelicals, particularly in the South, had been fairly soft. And this all of a sudden gave him a boost because he had been able to come back and say what his definition of marriage is. And that solidified his support with folk like the Southern Baptists, with conservative members in the Catholic Church, where they tend to be bellwether harbingers of what the election turnout is going to look like. And I also think that what it also does is it gives Romney an opportunity to come back and say, for all these last 3 years, you kept saying it's the economy, the economy, the economy, and now you want to try to engage on social issues, and that's not where the real fight is.
From a pure political standpoint, doesn't saying I support gay marriage at this point in history turn off more potential voters than?
Oh no, I don't think absolutely not.
Absolutely not, because the country is moving that way.
Right, the country's with him on this,
and the majority in the country is with him on already, and state by state, that is where the momentum is. It wasn't chosen politically by anybody, which is the odd thing. It actually started happening because a few people brought some cases in some courts, and the courts decided to start enforcing the Constitution that means equal rights, for all people. And the fact that President Obama did it is admirable. He's the first president who has ever had the courage to do it. And I think a lot of people admire that, even if they might not agree with him. They admire someone who has the courage to do that. The other thing is he's on the right side of history. The other thing is talking about at this particular time when, now we've got stories of Romney being a bully who held down a gay kid and cut his hair when he was in high school. And now he says he doesn't remember it. And he also says, well, that was back in the 60s, and who was gay was the last thing on our minds. I was in high school in the 60s, and believe me, whether someone was gay or not was on everybody's mind. And you had to be very careful. And believe me, we know the kind of people who held people down and cut their hair.
We have 30 seconds left, so that means it's my turn, right?
Is it courageous of Obama, or is it all political?
No. The reason we're talking about this is because, once again, the Gaffmeister struck. Joe Biden last Sunday said that he was comfortable with same-sex marriage.
What a terrible thing to say.
And what it did in the short time I have left, guys, what it did is it made the president uncomfortable because throughout his political career, he's never come out, even though he's for same-sex marriage, of course, but he never came out publicly and made a strong stance for it. He always said he was for civil unions. Now his vice president put him in a box. Of course, there's been a remarkable switch in public opinion about same-sex marriage. That's because of all of these new young voters who support same-sex marriage and older voters who are dying off who oppose it.
It cost him North Carolina.
There are reports that the president is not going to get the young voters that he did in 08. So I don't see this as a big plus for the president. The gorilla in the room is not same-sex marriage. It's the economy, and there's where the president is going to lose in November.
All right, next topic. How about UWM going out and hiring, albeit on a one-year contract, the former big-name Ohio State athletic director? This guy's 73 years old, coming out of retirement, a respected big name. You do have to wonder, though, if they're just looking for this as the guy to give them some advice as to what they have to do to get a basketball arena built, because they also just moved the very popular women's basketball coach to the Alumni Association, and my guess would be her job is going to go out to shake down people for cash, maybe for a new arena.
He's a placeholder with a consultant status.
Then why don't they say that?
Well, one-year contract, I think, is probably what says it.
Well, but the word permanent has been tossed around.
No,
too.
he will not be the permanent person, and they also have several challenges in front of them. One is they have to connect back to the donors, and that's probably why the former women's basketball coach is working with the alumni and development offices so that she can be the face of the athletics program when it comes to meeting with donors and kind of shoring up their support. There wasn't a whole lot of conversation out of the chancellor's office with the broader public that led to this choice. It came as a surprise to a lot of people internally and externally. So that's one area. The second area that they're going to have to address is this guy is going to be pushing through a very arcane system a number of building projects that require a lot of upfront money to begin with in order to get them to the top of the state list for buildings. And he's probably familiar with that because of the Ohio system, which is probably kind of akin to the one that we have here in Wisconsin.
Now, you live over near UWM. The neighborhoods there are not going to be excited about the possibility of a new basketball arena, are they?
Well, they aren't excited about having students going to the university there.
They'd like a place to park, Joel.
But so what? It's not just because I've been teaching there for a couple of years, but that campus is getting more and more impressive, and the student body as well, and the fact that it's attracting a lot of foreign students, a lot of diversity.
There is space over there,
and it is as big as the state university I went to in Indiana, which was the major state university in Indiana, and it is now under
you mean
some
student
really
body-wise.
Pardon me?
Student body-wise, it's
yeah, and under Mike Lovell's leadership, it's got a dynamic new chancellor, and bringing in this big name guy to do exactly what they're headed towards doing is to build a stadium over there, that to consolidate that campus around a facility like that is taking it to the next level, and they're doing it very methodically, and I think it's going to work.
They can't keep going down to play at the arena.
Well, there's a couple of things that might want to be mentioned that struck me as I looked into this. One is one of the people who was quoted about all of this was Harris Thurer, the fellow who owns the Admirals. Mm-hmm. A stadium the size that would accommodate a Division I college basketball team in the mid-major level is about the same size that you need for a team in the American Hockey League. And we're going to talk about the Bradley Center, I think, next. The Admirals are a tenant of the Bradley Center, and maybe have decided that their future would be better served in some other way, and perhaps there's some community of interest there. The other thing that struck me as I looked into the background of this gentleman is that he was at Ohio State when a couple of fairly large NCAA scandals washed over the campus, and there's been so much back and forth and stuff going on over there, and I have no idea what's going on in the athletics department at UWM, but just looking at it from the outside, there's been so much movement of personnel. You get people come, people go real quick. You wonder if there isn't something he's consulting about how to deal with something along those lines. And I don't Nobody's whispering in my ears. I'm just looking at what I see.
He might be an impressive guy, but you can't be too impressed when they say a one-year contract.
I'm a Panther, and I agree with all the good things that have been said about UWM here on the panel. That's why I don't want them going out and hiring a guy like this, even if he is a placeholder. He's 73 years old. He's been out of the.
He's not so old.
He's
Not as old as it once was, I tell you that.
Sorry, Joel.
It's the news 53.
He's been out of the business for 6 or 7 years. When he left Ohio State, he said he was burnt out. There were the scandals. I prefer that they go after somebody who's younger and more aggressive and more passionate.
One quick thing that also argues in favor of this guy being there only for the short term. Butler has left the conference. It's moving to the Atlantic 10. And in all of this transition within the conference, you need to have someone who has some knowledge about these conference transitions to kind of make sure that the interest of UWM is protected in all of this.
All right, let's stick with sports facility. Speaking about basketball, interesting how Herb Kohl comes out the other day and says it's time to replace the Bradley Center because the Milwaukee Bucks need a brand new home and they need it pretty soon. He also says, okay, he'll pick up part of the tab, doesn't give a dollar amount. Does this automatically push this to the front burner?
I've never been I just don't think that a new Bradley Center should be at the top of the priority list for this community. That being said, the new wrinkle is his putting some of his own money into this. I think Jane Pettit would be rolling in her grave if she knew that after 20 years, she'd sunk $200 million into this community plus, and all of a sudden, that facility is no longer of any use. Whether they come up with a new kind of facility for basketball and hockey and whatever other entertainment for downtown that this new place is intended to serve or not, the biggest chunk of the money to fund it is going to have to come from private support. The public simply will not bear that cost.
But in order for that to happen, Herb Kohl had to do what he did recently, and that's come forward and open up his wallet.
Right.
Everyone else was
I
sitting
applaud him for that because it moved people off a dime on it.
It needed to happen because people were sitting on the sideline and saying, hey, it starts with you, Herb. You're the owner, and with deep pockets, if you're not going to make a commitment, why should we? So it does now open up the private sector, and some businesses associated with the MMAC are saying, yeah, we'll fork over a couple of million, but it is odd here to sit and talk about the Bradley Center being obsolete. Yes, it's the oldest arena in the NBA. Yes, it probably could use some more sky boxes and so forth, but I don't see that there's all that much wrong with it, that it needs replacing,
right.
and it doesn't help when the Bucks are underperforming. But you're right, public sector money is not going to be a part of the equation because if somebody brings it up, it's a deal killer.
Now,
Gentlemen, we only have 30 seconds. Is it going to happen?
I don't know, but I do know that right next to the Bradley Center, you have a body that does tax more than $20 million a year, which is the Convention Center District, the Wisconsin Center District, people who run the Midwest Express Center or whatever it's going to be, or the Frontier Airlines Center, as it's going to be called. There's always been a problem between them and the folks who run the Bradley Center. As a result, we've got Bradley Center and the U.S. Cellular Arena. Somebody needs to knock heads together and say, look, we've got a taxing authority there. We got a taxing authority at Miller Park that's about to expire. Let's figure out how to make all of these constituencies happy enough so we can build something state-of-the-art,
and that'll
not
take
necessarily
years.
Keep the U.S. Cellular Center, which could be replaced by a new arena at UW-M.
That'll take years.
Okay. A few more thoughts on the Obama announcement about his support for gay marriage and the controversy surrounding it from writing and editing consultant Rick Horowitz. Rick has some sympathy for the gay marriage skeptics. After all, he used to be one of them. Rick.
True confession, it'd be hypocritical of me to bash all the people who are still antsy about same-sex marriage. Because honestly, I was late to that party myself. I had a writer's objection. Words have very precise meanings to me, and the word marriage had always meant a particular thing. People of the same sex exchanging rings wasn't part of that definition. The word was my stumbling block. Civil unions, fine. Hell, they could have called it carriage, and I probably would have been okay with it, as long as it wasn't marriage. And then, gradually, it occurred to me that preserving the sanctity of my dictionary wasn't really the point. That the sanctity of my dictionary didn't hold a candle to the sanctity, the reality, of two people in love with one another and wanting to commit to one another. So I came around later than some people, sooner than others, same as the president did, which is why bashing all the opponents would be hypocritical of me. But some of them, the professional objectors, the ones who are screaming about how the president has declared war on marriage, that's something else again. They're making so much noise you can barely hear yourself think. So I've got an idea. Let's turn down the volume just a bit. We can start by asking all those folks who've ever gotten divorced to put a cork in it. You're not exactly the best people to be defending the institution of marriage, you know what I'm saying? And that goes double if you've been divorced twice, and if you've been divorced 3 times, well, maybe you get your own radio show, but you don't get to be taken seriously, not on this subject. But that also goes for the ones who never got divorced, but who cheated on their spouses. You can put a cork in it too. No ginned-up outrage about those sacred vows, okay? Unless same-sex marriage made you cheat. That's right, if what made you cheat on your spouse was finding out there was a happily married gay couple down the block, let's hear it. Otherwise, keep it zipped. Your mouth, I mean. What did you think I meant? It's a lot quieter all of a sudden, don't you think?
Well, thank you, Rick, and thank you so very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.